Alrighty, so we are sitting down to film another one-shot review. Today, the movie that I watched was Exorcist Believer, and I just came off of watching the 50th anniversary cut of The Exorcist as a Fathom event this past Sunday. So fresh in my mind, I have a decent amount to say about this movie, but I thought about what I was going to say a little bit on the drive home. So I think the amount of time it takes me to say all this will actually be a lot less, hopefully. But we'll see if that works out for us. Today, movie theater was fine, except for, I have to say, in my area of the country, it was like pouring rain today, and you just cannot see the road lines on the pavement at all when it is like that, and like the sun's all blotted out and stuff like that. It was almost impossible to figure out where I was going in some of these like more I guess like closer to neighborhood type areas to get to the movie theater. But regardless, that aside, movie theater was fine. Popcorn was good. I got popcorn again. Icy machine, no Coke Icy. Went full blue raspberry today. Absolutely transcending experience. Blue raspberry, possibly goat flavor. But all right, let's get into the movie. So, The Exorcist Believer follows a similar premise to the rest of the Exorcist franchise, I would imagine, but I've only seen the first one, so it does follow a similar premise to the first, and in fact, possibly has the same demon. If we're talking about a demon, or if it's the devil himself, I'm not quite sure what we ended up deciding, what the definitive headcanon is after the first movie, but this same thing somehow has taken hold of these two girls after they go missing for 3 days. And somebody in the movie slipped in a little Bible fact that I want people to fact check this for me because I'm not sure if this is the case. But my whole time in growing up a Lutheran, I never heard this. But they said that the reason why Jesus took 3 days to resurrect because he went to hell to assert his dominance over Satan. And if that's true, that's kind of badass, of just like an explanation of what was going on. But anyway, so yeah, the two girls are friends. They go to school. They each tell each other's parents that, oh, we're going to go do homework at the other's house. And then they go off in the woods to do sneaky rituals. And at the beginning of the movie, we find that the one kid, her mom died in an earthquake in Haiti. And so she was doing this in an attempt to reconnect with her mother. And essentially what has happened is through this little ritual that they knew about, they opened themselves up to spirits, and that demon came in, and then 3 days later they were found, and they go to the hospital, and all of a sudden they start to experience the same kind of effects that Reagan was experiencing in the first Exorcist. But the twist with this movie is that there's a little bit of a sprinkle of like, first they get this Haitian protection ritual when she's still in the womb, and then the neighbor has some lady that does a different type of ritualistic healing practices toward a thing. And I guess the gimmick to this movie, not only being that there's the two girls, is that they use multiple different versions of attempts to try to like do rituals to exorcise the girls, and then the dad is a super skeptic. On top of that, they are able to go and find Reagan's mom from the first movie as an old lady and bring her into the fold, and she's a part of the movie too, and stuff like that. So I don't really want to get any farther into plot. I feel like I've set it up enough, and if you want to know about any of the crazy scenes, like you can just watch the trailer or you can go see it, and for the most part, they're pretty standard. And that's going to go into kind of how I feel about this movie. But, okay, so things that I like about this movie, I like that it seems like they really did faithfully try to do something that felt like it would fit in the same supernatural genre, hyper-specific category, or like the spirit of the original Exorcist movie, even if it was not directed or filmed in a way that made it super similar. And they did have a couple callbacks, other than the fact that the characters were literally returning in some form. But for the most part, it just felt like it was the same demon, like the things that were going on. And I appreciate that. Another thing was I kind of liked the angle that they were starting to go with having different rituals. And when they bring the mom back in, she's like, oh, the rest of my life I spent all this time studying different rituals to exorcise demons, and it's present in all forms of religion or spiritual practices since the dawn of humanity and all the way back to the Zoroastrians. She has these whole quotes that she's saying during one of these scenes. Yet, at the end of the movie, whatever everybody's doing is still some fork of Christianity because they're calling out to Jesus and God the entire time. So I thought that was a cool concept they could have gone with, similar to how I thought that it was interesting, and they did play into it a little bit, so I'll give them credit. But I thought it was interesting in It Lives Inside how they tapped into the East Indian mythology. Even if some other people didn't think that movie was too great, I thought it was really good. This movie, it's almost like they teased that they were going to do that, and they show that ritual at the beginning of the movie, but then that's it, and then it's like we're circling back. And they do one special kind of ritual where they use the bathtub and they like squeeze water over them, and it seems like some devilness is disappearing, but that ultimately isn't what ends it. But yeah, and in general, I think that there was nothing bad when it comes to like the operational aspects of the movie. Like, there was nothing that you could be like, oh man, they filmed that scene horribly, that person acted dumb, these lines didn't come off right, the writing was horrible in this area. All that kind of stuff, it really wasn't present. Everything was at least up to like standard quality, right? But what I will say is that this movie kind of doesn't have the same like emotional effect, the same like edge of your seat suspense situation that you get out of many horror films, nor does it have even close to the same amount of like subconscious grip on you or like suspenseful engrossment that you get when you watch the first Exorcist film. And the reason why I think that's the case is because they tried to make scenes. It was like they really did watch a bunch of the scenes that people like from the Exorcist series, just like the way that the camera was positioned and the lines were delivered. It seemed like they were actually trying to capture that same vibe, but then they matched it with the modern editing style of having a bunch of different cuts and everything moves really fast. And so a lot of those scenes where they're supposed to be like a lingering, or we're supposed to start noticing little things subconsciously by it kind of, how they did in The Exorcist, where it's like the scene kind of drags on a little bit for a couple extra seconds to build a little bit more suspense, but they've got the soundtrack going. They're maybe showing you some little stuff on the side, whatever. Just builds that whole mood while you're watching the movie, and that helps you get into it. This was, I feel like the writing itself wasn't bad. It was like the way that the shots moved from angle to person to person to person to perspective so quickly. Any of that magic in trying to capture what they did in the first one, like with the camera, it was lost. It was just non-existent. So with that being said, it basically comes out to be a pretty standard affair. I think if you see the trailer and you are interested in seeing this movie, then you would probably like seeing this movie in theater. And there were some pretty like mildly disturbing parts, but I just saw X earlier this week, and it's just, in comparison, I think this movie was actually better than Saw X in a lot of the ways, like as a movie, whereas Saw X might have been much more disturbing in certain aspects, and maybe The Exorcist is supposed to be more that way too. But yeah, so it was kind of mild on that far, but I would just say that, if you see the trailer and you think you'd be interested in it, you probably would. And so I would say it's worth to go see in theaters, mainly because we're in October and people are probably looking for, I'm just assuming that you want a reason to go see something that's spooky. But there are other movies out to go see as well. And maybe I recommend those over this one. I don't know. But I would say that this one is definitely worth it if you watch the trailer and you think you want to see it in theaters. Go ahead, see it in theaters. If you're on the fence, just skip it. If you weren't interested in this to begin with, just skip it and watch it later. And then, as far as out of 5, I think this one's just a solid 3. I don't think they do anything negative to push them down into a low 3 or a 2, but, it's lacking some of that like spiritual substance at the underlying level where, it's like greater than the sum of its parts. That would kick it up into the 4s. So that's the review. I'll give it a solid 3. That's The Exorcist Believer. And if you agree with me, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you disagree, give me a thumbs down, I guess, if you need to. But, leave me a comment as to why you feel that way, and I would love to talk. Maybe you disagree with my opinion, and I think it would be fun to talk about it. But finally, subscribe to the channel. Let's get those numbers up. And that's the review.